Captain Lisa Murphy stared at the radar screen aboard the UES Darwin and could not believe what she was seeing. 3 massive objects had appeared above Earth's major cities without any warning. They were not meteors or space debris. These things were clearly built by someone or something that was not human. The communication channel crackled to life as reports flooded in from around the world. London, New York, Tokyo, and Moscow all reported the same thing. Giant ships hung in the sky like sleeping giants. They were beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. The metal seemed to shift colors, and the shapes were too perfect for human eyes. To fully understand, Dr. Richard Kane rushed into the command center of the Darwin. His face was pale, and his hands shook as he held a tablet filled with readings that made no sense. He had spent his entire life studying the possibility of alien life, and now it was here. The xenobiologist could barely speak as he showed Murphy the energy signatures coming from the ships. "They are not using any technology we understand," Kane said. His voice was quiet, like he was afraid the aliens might hear him. "The power levels are beyond anything we have ever seen. These ships could destroy our entire planet without any effort at all." Murphy nodded but kept her eyes on the screen. She had been trained for first contact scenarios, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. The aliens had the advantage in every possible way. They had better technology. They had chosen when and where to reveal themselves, and they clearly knew far more about humans than humans knew about them. On Earth below, people were starting to panic. The news channels showed crowds gathering in the streets. Some people were praying while others were running. Governments around the world were trying to figure out what to do, but nobody had a real plan for this situation. Then the aliens spoke. The voice came through every radio, every television, and every communication device on Earth at the same time. It was calm and musical, but there was something cold about it. The speaker identified himself as Ambassador Veltar of the Zephyrian Coalition, and he brought greetings from the Galactic Council. "People of Earth," the voice said, "we have been watching your species for many years. You have reached a point in your development where you can no longer be ignored. The Galactic Council has decided to offer you a chance to prove yourselves worthy of joining our civilization." Murphy felt her stomach drop. The way Veltar spoke made it sound like humans were being judged rather than welcomed. This was not the peaceful first contact that everyone had hoped for. The alien continued speaking. "Your species will be given a series of trials called the Proving. These tests will determine if humanity deserves a place among the civilized races of the galaxy. The first trial will begin in 1 week. You will have 6 months to establish a successful colony on the planet you call Kepler 442b. Kane grabbed Murphy's arm. Kepler 442b was a world they had discovered years ago, but had never attempted to reach. It was over 1 to 200 light years away, and the environment was extremely hostile. The planet had violent storms, and the data suggested that dangerous creatures lived there. "The rules are simple," Veltar announced. "You may send only 500 volunteers. You may use only technology that existed on your world before the year 2020. If you succeed, you will face the next trial. If you fail, your species will be declared unfit for galactic society, and appropriate measures will be taken." The transmission ended, and silence filled the Darwin's command center. Murphy and Kane looked at each other, and both understood what the alien had really said. If humanity failed these trials, they would be destroyed. Within hours, emergency meetings were taking place in every capital city on Earth. Commander Ashley Brooks was called to Washington to head the newly formed Human Response Division. She was a military officer with experience in impossible situations, but even she felt overwhelmed by what they were facing. The debates that followed were intense and sometimes angry. Some nations wanted to refuse the challenge entirely. They argued that humanity should not have to prove anything to aliens who showed up making threats. Other countries saw this as humanity's destiny and wanted to accept the trials with enthusiasm. Dr. Kane spent days analyzing everything they knew about Kepler 442b. The more he studied the planet, the more convinced he became that the trial was designed to be impossible. The electromagnetic storms alone would destroy most of their equipment. The native life forms appeared to be highly aggressive and intelligent. The soil was toxic to Earth plants, and the atmosphere required breathing equipment. "They are setting us up to fail," Kane told Murphy during one of their late-night planning sessions. "No human colony could survive on that world with the technology restrictions they have imposed. This is not a fair test." Murphy had reached the same conclusion, but she was not ready to give up. "Maybe that is exactly why we need to try," she said. "If they think we will fail, then succeeding might be our only chance to survive." The selection process for the 500 volunteers began immediately. People from every country and every profession applied. Scientists, engineers, farmers, doctors, and soldiers all wanted to be part of humanity's answer to the alien challenge. The competition was fierce and the requirements were strict. Murphy volunteered to lead the mission despite the protests of her superiors. They wanted her to stay on Earth and help coordinate the response to the aliens. But she knew that the colony would need experienced leadership, and she was not willing to send others on a mission she would not take herself. The team that was finally chosen represented the best of humanity. Paul Martinez was an engineer who specialized in making things work with limited resources. Helen Carter was a botanist who had spent years developing crops that could grow in harsh conditions. Sam Williams was a geologist who understood how to find water and minerals on hostile worlds. Each person brought skills that would be essential for survival. As the deadline approached, the hastily built colony ship UES Defiance sat ready for launch. The ship had been constructed using only pre-2020 technology as the aliens had demanded. It looked primitive compared to the alien vessels that still hung in Earth's sky, but it represented humanity's refusal to surrender without a fight. The night before launch, Murphy stood on the observation deck of the Darwin and looked down at Earth. The planet looked so peaceful from space, but she knew that billions of people were counting on her mission. If the colony failed, humanity might not get another chance. Kane joined her at the window. "The odds are against us," he said quietly. "Everything about this trial seems designed to ensure our failure." Murphy smiled for the first time in weeks. "Then they do not understand humans very well," she replied. "We have a long history of doing impossible things when we have no other choice." The launch went smoothly, and the Defiance began its journey to Kepler 442b. As Earth grew smaller behind them, Murphy felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. 500 people had volunteered to risk everything for their species. She would not let them down. Back on Earth, the alien ships remained in position above the major cities. Ambassador Veltar and the Galactic Council watched the human ship depart and waited to see how long it would take for the colony to fail. In their experience, primitive species never survived the proving. Humans would be no different. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. The UES Defiance shuddered as it entered the atmosphere of Kepler 442b, and Captain Lisa Murphy knew immediately that they were in serious trouble. The electromagnetic storms that had shown up on their long-range sensors were far worse than anyone had expected. Lightning crashed around the ship in colors that did not exist on Earth, and the entire hull groaned under the pressure. "Landing systems are failing," called out pilot Jake Rivers from the front of the ship. "The storms are interfering with everything electronic. I can barely keep us in the air." Murphy gripped her seat as the ship lurched sideways. Through the viewport, she could see the surface of Kepler 442b rushing up to meet them. The landscape looked like something from a nightmare. Jagged crystal formations jutted up from the ground like broken teeth, and the sky was filled with swirling clouds that sparked with energy. The crash landing was controlled but brutal. Half of their equipment was damaged before they even stepped foot on the alien world. Engineer Paul Martinez immediately went to work trying to salvage what he could, while the other colonists secured the area around the ship. Within hours of landing, they had their first encounter with the native life forms. Dr. Lisa Chen was collecting soil samples near the ship when the ground beneath her feet began to glow. Crystalline creatures the size of large dogs erupted from the earth and moved toward her with frightening speed. "Shardlings," botanist Helen Carter whispered as she watched the creatures approach. Their bodies were made of living crystal that reflected the strange light of the alien sky. They moved with intelligence and purpose that made it clear they were not simple animals. The Shardlings circled the human landing site, but did not attack immediately. They seemed to be studying the newcomers and communicating with each other through flashes of light that traveled through their crystal bodies. Murphy ordered everyone to stay calm and avoid making any threatening moves. The first real attack came 2 days later. The colonists had been trying to set up solar panels when a group of Shardlings emerged from the ground and began destroying the equipment with precise strikes. It was clear that they understood exactly what the humans were trying to do, and they did not want it to happen. "They are targeting our power system specifically," Martinez reported after examining the damage. "This was not random destruction. They knew exactly what to break to cause the most problems." Geologist Sam Williams made an even more disturbing discovery while exploring the area around their camp. The electromagnetic storms that were making their lives so difficult were not natural weather patterns. Deep underground, he found massive structures that were clearly artificial. Someone or something had built machines to create the storms that were destroying human equipment. Back on Earth, Dr. Richard Kane was working around the clock to decode intercepted alien communications. The breakthrough came when he realized that the aliens were not trying to hide their messages very well. They seemed confident that humans were too primitive to understand their technology. What Kane discovered made his blood run cold. The proving was not a test at all. It was an execution. Every species that had ever been given these trials had failed, and their homeworlds had been destroyed afterwards. The Galactic Council used the proving as an excuse to eliminate species they considered dangerous or unworthy. Kane immediately tried to contact the colony on Kepler 442b, but the electromagnetic storms were blocking all communication. The colonists were on their own, and they had no idea that they were fighting for the survival of their entire species. On the alien world, the situation was getting worse every day. The Shardlings had become more aggressive and were attacking the colonists directly. Food supplies were running low because the Earth crops would not grow in the toxic alien soil. The constant storms were preventing them from using most of their technology, and morale was starting to collapse. Murphy gathered her team leaders for an emergency meeting inside the damaged ship. "We are not going to survive if we keep trying," "To fight this planet," she said. "Everything we have tried has failed. We need a completely different approach." Mechanic Tony Rodriguez had been studying the Shardlings more closely than anyone else. He had noticed that the creatures communicated using electrical patterns that traveled through their crystal bodies. "What if we try to talk to them instead of fighting them?" he suggested. The idea seemed crazy, but they were running out of options. Rodriguez worked with Martinez to build a device that could generate the same kind of electrical patterns they had observed in the Shardlings. The first attempts at communication were clumsy, but the creatures seemed to understand that the humans were trying to make contact. Meanwhile, medic Karen Foster was making her own discoveries about the alien ecosystem. While treating colonists who had been injured by the toxic soil, she noticed that small amounts of human blood actually seemed to help Earth plants grow better in the alien environment. It was a strange discovery, but it gave her an idea. Foster began experimenting with using human blood as a kind of fertilizer for their crops. The results were remarkable. Plants that had been dying in the alien soil suddenly began to thrive when treated with tiny amounts of human blood. It was as if humans and this alien world were more compatible than anyone had expected. Dr. Chen made the connection between Foster's discovery and Rodriguez's communication attempts. "What if the Shardlings are not trying to destroy us?" she asked during one of their evening meetings. "What if they are trying to protect this world from what they see as an invasion?" The breakthrough came when the colonists stopped trying to impose Earth solutions on the alien environment. Instead of fighting the planet's natural systems, they began to work with them. Rodriguez had learned enough of the Shardling electrical language to explain that humans did not want to harm their world. The response from the Shardlings was immediate and surprising. The attacks stopped and the creatures began to help the humans understand how to survive on Kepler 442b. They showed the colonists which areas were safe during storms and helped them find sources of clean water. Martinez worked with the Shardlings to develop new ways of generating power that used the planet's natural electromagnetic fields instead of fighting against them. The crystal creatures seemed to understand human technology better than the humans had expected, and they were eager to help once they realized that the colonists were not trying to destroy their world. Carter and Foster worked together to create hybrid crops that combined Earth plants with local organisms. The results were unlike anything either species had produced alone. The new plants could survive in the harsh alien environment while still providing nutrition that humans needed. Williams made the most important discovery of all when he realized that the underground structures were not weapons. They were part of a planetary communication system. The entire world of Kepler 442b was connected by a network of crystal formations that allowed different regions to share information. The electromagnetic storms were not attacks but attempts by the planet to understand the human newcomers. As the months passed, the colony began to thrive in ways that surprised everyone. The humans had not conquered Kepler 442b. Instead, they had become part of it. The Shardlings helped defend the colony from the planet's more dangerous life forms, while the humans shared their knowledge of agriculture and engineering. Murphy sent regular reports back to Earth, but she was not sure if any of them were getting through the electromagnetic interference. She hoped that Dr. Kane and the others would understand what they had accomplished. Humanity had not just survived on Kepler 442b. They had found a way to make the impossible work by refusing to give up and by learning to cooperate instead of trying to dominate. The real test was still coming. Murphy knew that the aliens who had sent them here expected them to fail. When they discovered that humanity had succeeded, they would not be pleased. The colony had proven that humans could adapt and survive in the most hostile conditions imaginable, but survival was only the first step. The real challenge would be convincing the Galactic Council that humanity deserved to live. Murphy looked up at the alien sky and wondered what the next trial would bring. Whatever it was, she was confident that humans would find a way to succeed. They always did. 6 months had passed since the UES Defiance crashed on Kepler 442b, and the colony of New Haven should not have existed. According to every computer model run by the Galactic Council, the human colonists should have been dead within 8 weeks. Instead, Captain Lisa Murphy stood on a hill overlooking a thriving settlement that defied all expectations. The landscape around New Haven had been transformed. Where once there had been only hostile crystal formations and toxic soil, now there were fields of hybrid crops that glowed softly in the alien twilight. Human buildings stood alongside crystalline structures created by the Shardlings in a design that belonged to both species and neither. Engineer Paul Martinez walked through the settlement, checking on the power systems that had become the heart of their success. The electromagnetic storms that had once threatened to destroy everything were now their primary source of energy. Working with the Shardlings, he had learned to tap into the planet's natural electrical field and convert it into power that could run human equipment. The energy output is 3 times higher than anything we ever achieved on Earth, Martinez reported to Murphy during their morning briefing. The Shardlings understand this planet's systems better than we ever could alone. Together we have created something that neither species could have built by themselves. Dr. Lisa Chen had arrived on a supply mission that the Galactic Council never expected would be needed. Her job as a xenobiologist was to study the relationship between humans and the native life forms. What she found challenged everything scientists thought they knew about cooperation between species. The Shardlings had become full partners in the colony's defense and development. They could sense threats from dangerous native creatures hours before human instruments detected anything. Their crystal bodies could process information about the planet's ecosystem in ways that complemented human analytical thinking perfectly. Electrical engineer Nicole Adams had made the most remarkable discovery of all: the underground structures that geologist Sam Williams had found were not just communication networks. They were part of a planetary consciousness that had been trying to understand humanity since the moment they arrived. The planet is alive, Adams explained to the growing crowd of Earth scientists who had come to study New Haven. Not alive like an animal or a plant, but alive like a vast thinking system. The electromagnetic storms were not attacks. They were questions. The planet was trying to figure out what we were and whether we belonged here. The answer had come when humans stopped trying to conquer Kepler 442b and started trying to understand it. The planetary consciousness had responded by accepting the human colonists as part of its own ecosystem. The storms became gentler around human settlements, and the Shardlings became protectors instead of threats. On Earth, the success of New Haven was causing panic in some circles and celebration in others. General Ashley Brooks, now in charge of humanity's response to the alien presence, knew that success would bring new dangers. The Galactic Council had not expected humans to survive the first trial, and they would not be happy about being proven wrong. Dr. Richard Kane continued his work decoding alien communications, and what he discovered confirmed Brooks's fears. The Council was divided about what to do next. Some members were impressed by humanity's achievement and wanted to welcome Earth into galactic civilization. Others saw human success as a threat that needed to be eliminated immediately. Ambassador Veltar of the Zephyrians was leading the faction that wanted to destroy humanity before they could become more dangerous. His communications with other council members revealed the truth about the proving. It was not meant to test worthiness for membership. It was meant to provide legal justification for genocide. The second trial was announced just as Kane made his most disturbing discovery. The colonists on Kepler 442b would face a simulated invasion using only resources available on their world. What Veltar did not reveal was that the invasion would be carried out by real Korthak warrior drones programmed to kill every human they found. Murphy received the news of the second trial with grim determination. She had expected something like this. The Council could not allow humanity to succeed without trying to destroy them in the process, but the aliens had made a crucial mistake. They still thought of humans as the same primitive species that had arrived 6 months earlier. New Haven was no longer just a human colony. It was a partnership between two intelligent species and a living planet that had accepted both as part of itself. The Shardlings understood what was coming, and they were prepared to defend their human partners. The planetary consciousness had learned to trust humans, and it would not allow them to be destroyed by outsiders. Mechanic Tony Rodriguez worked with the Shardlings to prepare defenses that the Korthak would never expect. Traditional weapons would be useless against alien technology, but the planet itself could be turned into a weapon. The crystal formations that covered the surface could be modified to channel the electromagnetic storms with deadly precision. Botanist Helen Carter and medic Karen Foster developed new applications for the hybrid crops they had created. Plants that had been designed for nutrition could be modified to produce chemical compounds that would interfere with alien equipment. The living ecosystem of New Haven was becoming a unified defense system. Geologist Sam Williams mapped the underground network that connected every part of the planet. If the invasion force tried to attack from multiple locations, the planetary consciousness could coordinate a response that would confuse and overwhelm them. The planet had learned human tactics and combined them with its own vast awareness. Back on Earth, General Brooks was preparing for the worst. If the colonists failed the second trial, she was certain that the Galactic Council would move directly to destroying Earth itself. Every nation was contributing to a desperate defense plan that would probably fail, but had to be attempted anyway. The council meeting that would decide humanity's fate was filled with tension and disagreement. The Aquari delegate argued that humans had proven themselves worthy of membership by succeeding where every other species had failed. The Zephyrians and Korthak insisted that human success only proved they were too dangerous to be allowed to survive. 3 other species found themselves forced to choose sides in a debate that would reshape galactic civilization. The insectoid. Threx were impressed by human adaptability, but worried about their unpredictable nature. The energy-based Luxarians saw potential in human creativity but feared their tendency toward violence. Ambassador Veltar made the final argument for human destruction. They have survived one trial through luck and primitive cunning, he said to the assembled council. But they cannot survive a real military assault. The Korthak will eliminate them and we will be done with this dangerous experiment. What Veltar did not understand was that humans were no longer the same species that had left Earth 6 months earlier. The colonists on Kepler 442b had learned to think like the planet itself. They saw connections and possibilities that individual minds could never grasp alone. Murphy stood in the command center of New Haven as reports came in of the approaching Korthak fleet. The alien ships were massive and heavily armed. They carried enough firepower to destroy the entire surface of the planet, but they were expecting to fight 500 desperate humans with primitive weapons. Instead, they would face an alliance of human creativity, alien intelligence, and planetary consciousness that had been preparing for this moment since the day the colonists first learned to communicate with the Shardlings. The Korthak had never lost a battle against primitive species. They were about to discover what happened when primitive species refused to stay primitive. The children of New Haven, who had grown up learning to think in harmony with the planetary consciousness, gathered around the crystal formations that served as communication nodes. Led by 16-year-old Kevin Park, they began to sing in frequencies that resonated through the planet's entire network. The song they sang was not human or Shardling, but something new that belonged to both species and the world they had learned to call home. It was a song of defiance and determination that reached beyond Kepler 442b to touch the minds of every thinking being in the star system. On Earth, Dr. Kane detected the transmission and realized what it meant. The colonists were not just preparing to defend themselves. They were preparing to change the galaxy forever. Humanity had found something on Kepler 442b that was more powerful than any weapon. They had found the courage to refuse to fail. The Korthak invasion fleet dropped out of hyperspace, expecting to find 500 desperate humans hiding on a hostile world. Instead, Admiral Zektar and his warriors encountered something that challenged everything they understood about warfare itself. The planet Kepler 442b was waiting for them, and it was very much alive. Captain Lisa Murphy stood in the crystalline command center that had been grown rather than built by the combined efforts of humans and Shardlings. Around her, the colony's children sat in meditation with their hands touching crystal nodes that connected them to the planetary consciousness. Their young minds had adapted to alien thought patterns more easily than the adults, and they had become the bridge between human strategy and planetary awareness. "Incoming ships detected," announced Nicole Adams from her position at the electromagnetic monitoring station. 12 heavy cruisers and 1 battle dreadnought. They are moving into attack formation above the northern hemisphere. The Korthak had planned their assault carefully. Their warrior drones were designed to be unstoppable killing machines that could adapt to any enemy tactic. The ships carried enough firepower to burn the entire surface of the planet if necessary. What they had not planned for was fighting an entire world that had learned to think like humans. The first surprise came when the Korthak tried to establish orbital bombardment positions. The electromagnetic storms that had once been random weather patterns suddenly focused into precise energy beams that struck their ships with devastating accuracy. Engineer Paul Martinez had worked with the Shardlings to turn the planet's natural electrical field into a massive defensive weapon. "Impossible," Admiral Zektar snarled as his flagship shuddered under the electromagnetic assault. "Primitive. Species do not have this kind of technology. Where are these attacks coming from?" His tactical computers could not find the source of the energy beams because there was no single source. The entire planet had become a weapon system controlled by a network of human minds working in harmony with alien intelligence. Every crystal formation on the surface could channel and focus the electromagnetic energy with precision that no conventional weapon could match. The Korthak deployed their warrior drones in dropships that were designed to penetrate any planetary defense. The drones were 3 meters tall, heavily armored, and equipped with weapons that could destroy tank formations. They had never failed to complete an extermination mission. But when the dropships entered the atmosphere, they found themselves flying through air that was no longer just air. Dr. Lisa Chen and botanist Helen Carter had worked with the planet's ecosystem to create airborne compounds that interfered with Korthak technology. The drones' sensors began to malfunction, and their targeting systems became unreliable. The real shock came when the Korthak drones reached the surface and discovered that they were not fighting individual humans scattered across the landscape. The colonists had become part of a unified defense system that stretched across the entire planet. When the drones attacked one location, defenders from hundreds of kilometers away knew about it instantly through the Crystal Communication Network. Mechanic Tony Rodriguez had taught the Shardlings how to understand human military tactics, while the crystalline creatures had shown humans how to think on a planetary scale. The result was a form of warfare that the galaxy had never seen before. The Korthak found themselves fighting an enemy that could see every move they made and respond with perfect coordination. Geologist Sam Williams guided teams of colonists through the underground tunnel systems that connected every part of the planet. When the Korthak tried to establish defensive positions, humans would emerge from crystal caves that had not existed on their maps. When they tried to hunt down human settlements, they would find empty buildings because the entire population had moved through tunnels that shifted and changed like living things. The young colonists, led by Kevin Park, had become something that frightened even the battle-hardened Korthak warriors. These children could predict where the drones would attack next because they were connected to the planetary consciousness that could sense electromagnetic signatures from orbit. They moved through the crystal formations like ghosts and struck at the drone's weakest points with precision that seemed supernatural. On Earth, Dr. Richard Kane was monitoring the battle through quantum communication relays that the planetary consciousness had learned to operate. What he saw defied every law of military science he knew. A few hundred humans were not just surviving against the galaxy's most feared warriors, they were winning. General Ashley Brooks received Kane's reports with amazement and growing hope. "They are not fighting like humans," she said as she watched the tactical displays. "They are fighting like something completely new." The turning point came when the Korthak tried to use their most powerful weapon. The battle dreadnought positioned itself in high orbit and prepared to fire a planet-killing beam that would destroy all life on Kepler 442b. It was a weapon that had destroyed dozens of worlds, and no known defense could stop it. But the planetary consciousness had been learning about Korthak technology since the moment their ships arrived. Working through the crystal network, Martinez and the Shardlings had prepared a surprise that would shock the galaxy. Instead of trying to block the planet-killer beam, they redirected it. The massive energy discharge struck the planet's surface and was immediately absorbed by a network of crystal formations that had been positioned precisely for this moment. The energy traveled through the underground network and was channeled back into space through crystal spires that acted like massive electromagnetic cannons. The redirected beam struck the Korthak dreadnought with its own energy, amplified by the planet's natural field. The massive warship exploded in a burst of light that could be seen from the surface. For the first time in their recorded history, the Korthak had lost a battle dreadnought to what they considered a primitive species. Admiral Zektar stared at the wreckage of his flagship on the tactical display and could not understand what had happened. His surviving ships were being systematically disabled by energy weapons that seemed to come from the planet itself. His warrior drones were being hunted by humans who fought like they could read minds. The final humiliation came when the colonists began to capture Korthak technology instead of just destroying it. The planetary consciousness could analyze alien systems faster than the Korthak tactical computers could adapt to new threats. Within hours, humans were using modified Korthak weapons against their former owners. Karen Foster had made a discovery that changed the entire nature of the battle. The compounds in human blood that helped Earth plants grow in alien soil also had unexpected effects on Korthak biotechnology. The warrior drones used organic components in their armor and weapon systems that became unreliable when exposed to human biochemistry. The colonists began using their own blood as a weapon, not in primitive ways but in sophisticated applications. That turned the Korthak technology against itself. Weapons would jam, armor would weaken, and communication systems would fail when exposed to carefully prepared human biological compounds. The battle that the Galactic Council expected to last. Hours stretched into days as the Korthak found themselves unable to complete their mission. Their warriors were being defeated by tactics they had never encountered. Their technology was being turned against them by methods they could not understand. On the Council's monitoring stations, representatives from 7 different species watched, in shock as the impossible happened. The humans were not just surviving the second trial. They were demonstrating capabilities that challenged the fundamental assumptions of galactic civilization. Ambassador Veltar demanded that additional Korthak fleets be sent to complete the extermination, but other council members began to object. The Aquari delegate pointed out that humanity had now succeeded in 2 trials that were designed to be impossible. Perhaps it was time to reconsider their approach, but the Zephyrians and their allies were not ready to admit defeat. If humans could not be destroyed through official trials, then they would have to be eliminated through direct action. Veltar began to prepare for the final solution that would bypass the Council entirely. Murphy received word of the approaching Council fleet through the quantum communication network that now connected Kepler 442b with monitoring stations throughout the galaxy. The message was simple and terrifying. A massive armada was approaching the Sol system with orders to destroy Earth before humanity could become an even greater threat. The colonists had won the second trial, but the real battle was just beginning. The Galactic Council had decided that humanity was too dangerous to be allowed to exist. They would not make the mistake of underestimating human capabilities again, but they had already made a much more serious mistake. They had given humanity time to learn and grow and discover what they were truly capable of when pushed to the edge of extinction. The galaxy was about to discover that humans who refused to fail could accomplish things that changed the universe itself. The war for humanity's survival was about to begin. When the Galactic Council's extermination fleet arrived in the Sol system, they expected to find a desperate humanity begging for mercy. Instead, they discovered something that would be remembered in galactic history for thousands of years. Humanity had learned to fight like humans, and the galaxy was not prepared for what that meant. Admiral Lisa Murphy stood on the bridge of the UES New Haven as Earth's defensive fleet took formation around her flagship. The ship itself was a fusion of human engineering and the living crystal technology they had learned from the Shardlings. It could repair damage to itself in real time and adapt to new threats faster than any conventional warship. The space around Earth was filled with activity that confused the alien observers. Ships that should not have been possible to build were patrolling the outer system. The moon had been converted into a massive defense platform using principles learned from Kepler 442b's planetary consciousness. Mars showed signs of rapid terraforming that defied every known law of planetary engineering. General Ashley Brooks coordinated Earth's defense from a command center buried deep beneath the planet's surface. Around her, technicians monitored displays that showed the approaching alien armada. There were over 200 ships in the Council fleet, including the massive Zephyrian world ship Eternal Harmony. It was the largest military force ever assembled for the destruction of a single species. They still think they are fighting the same humans who left Earth 2 years ago. Brooks said to Dr. Richard Kane as they watched the tactical displays. "They have no idea what we have become." Kane nodded as he studied the alien formation. His work decoding their communications had revealed the Council's strategy. They planned to destroy Earth's defensive fleet quickly and then use planet-killing weapons to eliminate all life in the Sol system. It was meant to be a simple extermination mission that would end humanity's threat to galactic order. What they found instead was a defense system that operated on principles the galaxy had never seen before. Human ships did not fight in organized formations like civilized species. They swarmed and adapted and improvised solutions that no tactical computer could predict. The battle began when the Korthak heavy cruisers moved to engage what they thought was a small human patrol fleet. Instead of running or forming defensive lines, the human ships scattered in all directions and began to behave in ways that made no tactical sense. Engineer Paul Martinez commanded one of the hybrid vessels that had been constructed using Shardling biotechnology. When Korthak energy weapons struck his ship, the living crystal hull absorbed the energy and redirected it back at the attackers. The aliens found themselves being destroyed by their own weapons in ways that their computers said were impossible. The Zephyrian battle formations relied on precise coordination and overwhelming firepower, but human ships refused to stay still long enough to be targeted effectively. They moved like schools of fish or flocks of birds, responding to threats with collective intelligence that no individual commander could control. Dr. Lisa Chen used the quantum communication network that connected New Haven to Earth to coordinate attacks across multiple star systems simultaneously. When the Council fleet tried to concentrate their forces against Earth's defenses, they would suddenly find themselves under attack from directions they had not expected. The children from the colony on Kepler 442b, now grown into young adults, who thought in harmony with planetary consciousness, had become humanity's most effective weapons. Led by Kevin Park, they could predict alien tactics hours before the attacks came and guide human responses with precision that seemed like magic. Nicole. Adams had learned to harness electromagnetic storms not just from single planets, but from entire star systems. The solar wind itself became a weapon as she directed charged particles into precisely focused beams that could disable alien ships from millions of kilometers away. The real shock came when the humans revealed that they had not been fighting alone. The Shardlings from Kepler 442b had spread to other worlds through human colony ships and had awakened planetary consciousness on dozens of systems. The Council found itself fighting not just humanity, but an alliance of living worlds that could coordinate their defenses across interstellar distances. Mechanic Tony Rodriguez had taught alien ecosystems how to understand human technology while learning to think like living planets himself. The result was a form of warfare that turned entire star systems into weapons. Asteroid belts became projectile launchers, and gas giants became electromagnetic pulse generators. Ambassador Veltar watched his carefully planned assault fall apart, as human unpredictability proved impossible to counter. His ships were being destroyed by tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare. Worse, the humans seemed to be learning from every engagement and adapting faster than Zephyrian technology could respond. The turning point came when the youngest humans began to communicate directly with individual members of the alien crews. 16-year-old Kevin Park had learned to project his thoughts through the quantum network in ways that bypassed official communication channels and reached individual alien minds. What those aliens heard changed everything. The humans were not trying to conquer or destroy the galaxy. They wanted to help it become something better than it had ever been before. Every innovation they had developed, every breakthrough they had achieved, they were willing to share with any species that wanted to learn. The Aquari delegation aboard their bioships was the first to respond. They had always believed that cooperation was stronger than domination, but the Council's rigid hierarchies had never allowed them to prove it. When they heard humanity's offer of partnership, they broke formation and moved to join the human fleet. The Luxarian energy beings followed next. They had spent millions of years trapped in mechanical bodies because their technology had reached a dead end. The humans offered them something their civilization had forgotten how to find. They offered them hope for growth and change. Even some of the Korthak warriors began to question their orders as they learned what humanity was really offering. These were not the primitive savages they had been told to destroy. These were potential teachers who could help the galaxy evolve beyond the limitations that had held it back for eons. The final confrontation came when Ambassador Veltar's worldship Eternal Harmony faced Admiral Murphy's fleet in the space between Earth and Mars. The Zephyrian vessel was the size of a small moon and carried enough firepower to destroy entire solar systems. It was the ultimate expression of the Council's belief in dominance through superior force. Murphy's response was typically human. Instead of trying to match the alien ship's firepower, she offered to talk. The conversation that followed was broadcast across the galaxy through the quantum network that now connected thousands of worlds. "You have proven that you can destroy us," Murphy said as her image appeared on screens throughout the Council fleet. "But can you prove that you should? We are offering you something that no species in galactic history has ever offered. We are offering to help you become better than you are." The debate that followed was not conducted with weapons, but with ideas. Humanity had learned something on Kepler 442b that the galaxy had forgotten. They had learned that cooperation was not just more effective than domination. It was more fun. The children who had grown up learning to think like living planets sang songs that resonated through the quantum network and touched the minds of beings across the galaxy. The songs were about possibility and growth and the joy of discovering new ways to solve old problems. One by one, the alien species began to listen, not to their official representatives or their military commanders, but to the humans who were offering them a chance to become part of something larger than any individual civilization. The Council's vote was closer than anyone had expected, but the result changed galactic history forever. 4 species voted to accept humanity as full partners in a new kind of civilization. 3 species, led by the Zephyrians, refused to abandon their belief in hierarchical dominance. The galaxy split peacefully into 2 factions. The old Council continued to rule through fear and superior technology, while the new alliance grew through cooperation and shared innovation. Humanity had not conquered galactic civilization. They had inspired it to evolve. Admiral Murphy stood on the observation deck of New Haven 5 years later and watched ships from dozens of species working together on projects that had been impossible under the old system. Former enemies were now partners in enterprises that stretched across multiple star systems. The colony on Kepler 442b had become a center of learning where beings from across the galaxy came to study new forms of cooperation. The planetary consciousness that had first welcomed humanity now hosted thousands of different species in harmony that no single world had ever achieved. On Earth, the old alien ships that had once threatened humanity now served as embassies and research centers. Children played in parks where human and alien technologies created impossible gardens that bloomed with life from dozens of worlds. Dr. Kane, now elderly but still working, had decoded the final message from the old Galactic Council. It was a warning to other species about the dangers of human cooperation.